Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. In this video I'm going to try to readdress the problem with the P800. There seems to be a bit of misunderstanding out there as to what is actually taking place with any refillable cart that has been sold for the past year or so, and how it affects the resetting or lack of, actually, on any P800 from EPSON that was destined for the North American market. Normally, the process would have been that you would use up your inks until they reach a certain low level, at which point somewhere around like under 15% or so, and then you would have had to remove the cart, top it off, and upon reinstalling it, that would trigger the auto reset process and you would have a full reading cart again. But such is not the case. And some folks think that if they continue to top off the cart, even though it has reached that low setting, that they can continue printing. No, there's no mechanism inside those refillables to tell the printer anything about the actual physical ink level. So you could top off until the cows come home and the chip is still going to declare that cart as empty. And when it does so, that is it. The process, or the auto reset process, will not work on any printer from North America. That includes United States, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, every one of the U.S. possessions, as well as Canada. So please, keep that in mind, that it's just not going to work. And if you have already used a refillable cart system, regardless of its source, your printer, or your P800, I should specifically say, is now locked to the use of OEM cartridges only. Okay, so here's what's happening. I'll try to explain it as well as I can. I had it explained to me just recently again. The printer remembers the, say for instance, the yellow ID code. How many yellow ID codes are there? Thousands. Okay, each yellow cart that you buy has a specific individual ID code. Nothing to do with ink level. Okay, that's a different code. So what happens is that the printer records that code and then remembers the ink level. Okay, so it knows that it's yellow number so and so and so, and it's at a full level. So then you begin to use it. Even if there was some magical resetter that would actually rewrite the ink level code back to full, it would not work, because resetters do not change the ID code of the cartridge, of the actual chip. Okay, so it will see it as the same original ID code, and now it's trying to fool the printer into thinking it is at a higher ink level than it was before, than the printer actually remembers it being. So that's what's happening. The auto reset chips, they want to reset the ink level to full, except for that pesky ID code. Okay, and so yellow, magenta, light magenta, cyan, light cyan, matte black, photo black, light black, and light black, they all have specific codes, and the printer has not remembered every one of those codes for those 9 so-called auto reset chips. The chip might be trying to reset itself, but the printer system says, nope, you're still empty, because you try to fool me. You have the same ID code, and you're telling me that you are at a higher ink level than you were the last time I recorded you. So no go. So that's what's happening. even if I do change my cartridge with another refillable cartridge, it is now locked. It also has a locking mechanism that locks it. And so now the only choice I have is to load original carts. Luckily, I have a set that is around 50-ish% right now. And so my only option at this point is to start looking for T85s, I believe they're numbered, and begin to stock up on OEM inks for my Pro 800. Once I run out of this, that'll be the end of that. I will not be able to run Precision Colors inks anymore, and I'll have to revert back to OEM. That's the way it is. Now, if you live in a foreign country, foreign, I mean outside of North America, those printers can be used with these refillable carts. They will work. It's only the North American coded printers that do not work. Okay, so what to do? Well, someone from Cone, in fact, John Cone himself said that the only way would be to import a printer from another part of the world into the United States. Well, would that be really worthwhile? Well, it might be to you. So, consider doing that. That might be one option. Another option is to, and I don't even think this is possible, is to download, say, the UK firmware and try to flash your printer with it. You're taking a huge chance that the printer will just be permanently broken at that point. But that was brought up, and I don't think that's going to work. And even if it did work, even if you could flash the printer, I think that the main board has a specific North America code on it as well, and it will still not work. Even though the printer would magically become, say, a UK zone printer, the main board probably has something in it that says, no, I am a North American printer, and therefore not work still. But I don't have the nerve to do that. I don't have the nerve to test that. I hope that someone out there who has more nerve than I do can do that and see if it will actually become a UK printer. In the olden days, you used to be able to do that, by the way. For instance, on some Canon printers, you could turn them into European printers and gain CD printing. That was not allowed in the USA models of Canon, say, for instance, the 9000 Mark II. Another option was to change the main board to a European main board. Well, then you run into problems where you have to recalibrate the printer internally. You need a service or a adjustment program and a spectrophotometer and calibrate the printer itself. And that is way above my learning process and way above my pay grade. So that is something that, in fact, with my 3800 that does not work. I do have a logic board, and I was told that even though I have to install it, I would have to recalibrate the printer, and I have no clue how to do that. But anyway, so I just wanted to clarify that it's not just a matter of trying to fool the printer by topping off your carts. That's not going to work. That's recommended. If it was working, yes, you want to top them off, because you don't want to take a chance that if the chip reaches empty, your cart reached empty long before that. In other words, your cart would reach empty before your chip says it was empty. And guess what that does? It introduces air into the ink lines. Wow, and then that's a huge problem, because you would have to bleed those ink lines out of that air, and the only way to do that is with an adjustment program. And although there is one for the P800, I haven't really tested it to see if it actually does work. But yeah, you don't want to do that. So even if the carts were working, you would have to top off, say, when they reach half level, you would want to top them off. The same thing goes for a EPSON R3000 with refillable carts. You really cannot trust the chips to be accurately keeping track of the actual physical ink levels. It just doesn't happen. So what they recommend is that you keep topping them off constantly to make sure that even when they reach empty, you just don't run out of ink in the cart and then introduce air into the ink lines. But I have to tell you that my R3000 just recently, I had to reset the yellow and it became empty. It was no longer recognized. So what I did was you open up the lid, remove the cart, fill it up with yellow ink, top it off, pop it back in, and mine are push button. So you just push a button and it's reset. Now the newer version are auto reset. So basically once they reach empty, you get the non-recognition signal, you remove the cart. Hopefully you will have already topped them off earlier. Add enough ink to bring them to the top again, and when you pop it back into the printer, it is recognized as full once again. So that is it. I hope this doesn't depress too many people. We're still looking and looking and looking everywhere, and so are all of these companies, for a way to solve this huge problem with the P800. For some reason, Epson decided this was the printer they were going to target and lock in the US and Canadian markets. All right. Thank you once again for watching. Please subscribe, share, and like. And until the next time, everybody, bye-bye.